Hello and welcome back to part 3 of the IPControl CLI process. And in the third video, we're going to import the interfaces that our routers would use in the event that we can't discover them. So we went under the premise in the beginning that we imported the routers, that we would be able to discover those. We created a container that represents the device called a device container and attached those to the hierarchy. And now we're going to go through an example or a scenario where you're unable to discover the device, but you have the interface names and you want to import those names into their respective routers. So really to do that, really simple to do. It's a command called ImportNetElementInterface, and you can do this through CLI or through API. The two fields that we need, or actually three, there's the name of the device, which is the router. We have then the interface name, which we're going to supply, and then we'll have a status of either disabled, enabled, or deployed. So the enabled is effectively the default that we'll use in this process. So what we want to do then is we want to create an Excel spreadsheet or some type of CSV file that helps us mimic that. So we're going to do that and do that right now. And first thing I'm going to do is I have a list of names. I'm just going to go ahead and paste these into the second column, since this is the interface name. And I'm going to call this router 0001, since that's our name. Now, this should be exactly as your router is defined. So if you're using a fully qualified name or other types of domain structure, then you want to include that. So it should be fully qualified. And then in that data, what I just need to have, let's get rid of one of these, is just copy that down. So effectively, if I had 24 interfaces, there's going to be 24 interfaces imported for one device. Now, how you track that, you can do it all in one single spreadsheet, do it all in an import, or just simply do it based on devices. And probably the better way to do it is by device and keep a separate spreadsheet or tab for that information. So I'm going to go ahead and just save this as a file, and I'm going to need to copy and STP that file up to my system, my executive, and I'm just going to call this the router 001 int CSV, so I can locate this again. And let's go ahead, and I think I have a window open. We'll just go ahead and copy that through there. Okay, and so what we want to do now is SSH to your executive, login as IncAdmin, and we want to CD back to the opt-in control at the CLI directory. So if you're not already there, go ahead and do that. Then we want to run the command import net element interface. The options here, though, I'm not sure, so let's see what the options are. All right, so it's looking for a file input, so we're going to specify our file, and that should then be /temp/router 0001 int CSV. Now, like the others, I'm going to put a reject file just in case there's any errors. I can go back in and just import the error file once I've corrected it, and an error file itself, so it'll tell me what the error is if I'm not already aware. And let's do, this should be reject CSV. Okay, and we'll go ahead and run that and give it our credentials. Oh, there you go. So it didn't like my enable status. Let's go back and look at this real quick. Enabled. So you'll definitely want to make sure you get this right the first time. So let me edit that file. And I'm just going to change enable to enabled. And then we're just going to up arrow key this again and try it again. Now, if you had an error and you didn't know that you had an error and you came back to that reject file, there would be a reject that we should be able to take a look at. That's actually a temp. Reject. And here that would show you the ones that failed. So in that first example, pretty much everything. And then there also would have been an error file that you could take a look at if you wanted to know what that error was. So if we looked into that error file itself, after the second run, since there wasn't any, it may not show it, but yeah, here it does. And so now it shows us what the status was and what the error was specifically. Right. So those interfaces should be imported. I didn't get an error back on the other, and we'll go take a look at those under the interface names. So we would select router 1, and then under the interface tabs, you'll see, effectively those interfaces. Now you can click on these further if you had like the VRF, or we could have imported the VRF at the same time, and everything, would have been fine there. Now there's a couple things you can do with the blocks, and I guess I'll cover this now. We got a couple more minutes here. So the first thing is there's no subnets attached to this. If you have subnets that you want to import, you can run the ImportChildBlock through the import wizard and tell it that it's this router and this interface to import to. And or you can run it through the add child block, selecting the interface, then selecting your data block types or however you define those, and then your sizes and subnets. So you can go back in and manually do that or selectively do this. And I think in the next video, I'll come back and do one for the import to show you how you would do the import format for the child blocks to import them into that structure. But remember, again, if you can't import this, you can always attach the blocks, add a new subnet if it doesn't exist. If it does exist, attach it, and also import those to API or CLI. So I'll come back in video 4. We'll finish this up, showing you this whole phase of this complete, and should be done. Take care. We'll see you in the next video.